Good evening, and we are back with our panel discussion series with our experts. For today's topic of discussion is cultural shifts, obligations, society versus the doctor. We have very extreme panelists here. Our first panelist is Dr. Arun Jamkar. He began his journey as a medical student from GMC Aurangabad, and since then he has spent 3 decades teaching surgery and performing thousands of major operations in places like Grand Medical College, Mumbai, BJ Medical College, Pune. His consistent inclination towards the medical research resulted in a PhD in surgical oncology from National Institute of Virology in Pune. He has also served as the Vice Chancellor of Maharashtra University of Health Sciences in Nashik. Our second panelist is Dr. Buddhadev. He's an MBE position holder in UK, founder and managing editor of the Swasthya, a journal for healthcare professionals. He's also a fellowship of the Institute of International Organizational Psychological Medicine. Dr. Buddhadev has served as a director of racial equality for a number of race councils funded by the former Commission for Racial Equality. With a background in electronics and race equality, Dr. Buddhadev has been promoting capacity building initiatives through implementing standards for good governance. Welcome to the panel, sir. Our third panelist is Dr. Pratibha Naithani, who is currently based in Mumbai, and she's an associate professor and head of the political science department at St. Xavier's College. Besides her work as a professor and department head, she is concerned with works on issues related to welfare of children, women, and tribal people. In Mumbai, she is a member of the Reconstructive Surgery Foundation, and a voluntary organization which offers free plastic and reconstructive surgery to economically underprivileged people. Welcome, ma'am. And our last panelist, definitely not the least, is Dr. Ashok Gupta, who has been consistently sharing his expertise with Docplexus. He's very kind and a renowned reconstructive plastic surgeon, and has been he's also an awardee of Padma Shri. Dr. Gupta is a legend in his field, and he has been involved in many social work relief activities as well. And we are lucky to have experts like him on the panel. So, without further ado, I will invite Dr. Gupta to put context to today's discussion.
Thank you, Darshika, and thank you. It's my real honor and pleasure to be with such an excellent panel, one of the very outstanding, I think, panel discussion in the Docplexus in the last few months, which I have noted. Today's topic has been explained. There's a conflict of obligations, society versus doctors. Who are more responsible? What is expected from this? And particularly is very important in terms of the COVID pandemic, which we are facing now. There are challenges of the COVID. There's an unpredictability of the COVID. We don't know what turn it's going to take. We were under preparedness is one of the issue for second wave, is likely to be issue for third wave. Are we really planning well for the third wave? And in view of all this world pandemic, there is a need for a cultural shift and redefining the obligations of both doctors and community and doctors and society and other conditions also. We also need to have framing of some ideas about the new collaboration and cultural collaboration between the two groups. There's a diversity of impact of society, and there's a shift of culture between the society and the doctors. Young graduates are scared of being scared of being attacked, and incidentally yesterday was a Save the Savior Day, which is the biggest symbol of the lack of trust between doctors and society. If the doctors have to protest against the society with a big banner of IMA, Save the Savior, I mean it is sending a strong message that they are being affected, they are losing the trust factor with the community, etc. So healthcare sector, we talk about accountability, we talk about openness, we talk about high standards of governance, and we build confidence. And there can't be a better person than Dr. Arun Jamkar to talk about this. I mean, as we said, we are blessed with an outstanding panel of highly motivated and accomplished speakers who will take us to these complex issues. And of course, I will start with the question of with Dr. Jamkar. Both of us are almost contemporary from the time of medical education. I entered in 68, and probably Dr. Jamkar also entered medical school around the same time. So in last 50 years, what do you think, what has changed in the attitude of medical students and young doctors uh, uh, towards the society. When I joined, I was told that once you join a government medical college, your life is made and you are supposed to serve the downtrodden, you are supposed to serve the people who have allowed you to learn everything on them. During surgery, we have learned on the poor patients and we have an obligation to give back to them. But things have changed. Now, before they pass out, they start looking at the private hospital attachment. They start looking in terms of a posh office and luxury car and all those things. So the life expectation of a surgeon has changed. And I request Dr. Jamkar to throw light on this before we start the panel, because this is a very learning example for young doctors in the Docplexus group. What should they expect when they graduate out, either undergraduate or postgraduate studies? Yes, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. I think let me go straight. There has been a total ethical breakdown of whole sectors of society. Doctors being the part of the society, they are what you call as the front burners. At the same time, society thinks doctors is a noble profession, and that's why the values and ethics has to be made by only doctors. But I think every sector of the society has to be ethical and has to be with values. Now, the violence against doctors is not only because of those values, but it's about the reaction and the perception of the people. So I think there is something wrong going on in, say, values in education. So shall I share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
So a brief talk about values, ethics, and doctors and society. This is me. Now, after I retired as a vice chancellor, I'm working with a technical institute called Persistent, because I believe the technology is going to solve the problems of Indian health. In addition, I'm distinct professor with symbiosis. Let me just start with a poem from Kusuma Bridge. Now, he's talking about the crisis of values in horror society. Now, it's in Marathi, but then what he says is, on the path of mountain of enlightenment, corpse of not only human but also the values are found, because values everywhere are found to be in a dead. The human corpse are tolerable as they are mortals, but although assured by all preachers or religious people, society is weak and dead, but the values remain immortal. And now the cops are shouting that whole creation is mortal. So I think this is one of the very nice poem, that whole set of values which were there now are finding dead. And all these dead values go everywhere, because we lack, the moment we lack values, we lack the qualities, characteristics, and ideas, because our values affect our decisions, goals, and behavior. And the belief of the feeling that something is doing worthwhile. And values define what we are worth. So I'm trying to go into the basics, because how values are maintained, how values are created. And I'm just going to introduce something called as mirror neurons. And these are the specialized cells in the brain. And then all our learning goes by imitations. The babies learn by imitation. The language goes by imitation. So much so that whole values come by imitation. So values come from home, how your parents behave, how your teacher behave, how your friend behave. And then if you can see the first 7 years of life, your values come from parents. Then they comes from heroes and the teachers. And then comes the peer group. And the problem is, all these values, because we are imitating, we are following, they come by, say, imitating those role models. And the teachers are role model. So what is most important thing to remember is values come by following. So what happens, all those values which we are coming by teachers in action, we need to find out what they are doing and not what they are talking. So sometimes teacher talk very nicely, but in practice they do something entirely different. So that's why we have a saying in Marathi that bole taisa chale त्याची वंदावी पाऊले अंगे झाडीन अंगण त्याचे दासत्व करेल. That means anybody who is working, who is behaving the way he talks, need to be followed. And what happens when these students, they're coming, all these values which are coming at present, all the values, they come with what you called as primary teacher and primary education. Secondary education gives something. And when they come to the professional college, they just don't understand what is going on. That whatever they have been taught, all values, they have come with the disbelief, they design, then they frustrate, they become angry and emulate. And then what happens is we are systematically acculturing. And what is called as, this is the process. What I think some of the panelists will understand that there is a traumatic de-idealization. A student is coming with all his values, but then we are destroying systematically in professional education. And then that's what happened, that then he's free to do all the malpractices. So what is important now, therefore, is to teach the people that it's not doing things right, but doing right things. So the most important thing is we need to teach values across. Now, it's not only for doctors, it's for all sectors of life. Now, we declare ourselves as secular. And the moment we declare ourselves as secular, anything that we are teaching values, people thought that we are teaching religion by backdoor. As a net result, believe me, Dr. Gupta will agree with me that we were never taught about ethics and values in our curriculum. And now, as a vice chancellor, I was trying to introduce values in healthcare, a Vyasa model. It was a model by, say, Janaki Foundation. And these are all those values that they come. And then when we try to introduce these values, as a vice chancellor, we did a lot of new things. And then we started training people. The society gave objection that MUHS is introducing religion by backdoor. That's why we have to take a back step. At the same time, I was introduced to Dr. Russell, who has an UNESCO values, and therefore UNESCO declaration was there. And then we introduced all those values under UNESCO care of bioethics in Haifa. And then these were all those values which everybody knows. And then what we did is we started teaching values by changing the curriculum. And therefore MUHS was first to start this curriculum, where it was a vertically integrated bioethical, say what you call undergraduate medical students. So we introduced that whole concept of 5 hours of ethics in first MBBS, and then everywhere all those values were taught, and then it was integrated. That means suppose you are talking of a carcinoma of breast, maybe medical management, surgical management, radiological management, at the end has to be ethical management. Therefore, with this small group teaching, we were able to do. And then subsequently, we put this whole thing to Medical Council of India, and then they come with an EdCom module. And I think EdCom module is putting a lot of training in values. And what is important is the hidden curriculum. When teachers talks of something, he doesn't talk of something which the student observes. And I think that we have to find out. I may not go into much detail, but then value-based education has to go everywhere. And these are the 7 pillars which are given by Neil Hawk, by modeling, remodeling, inner curriculum. And these need to be go inside. Most important thing is because we have role models, we follow leadership. And therefore, leadership has to be ethical. And the present crisis of ethical standards in country is because of we lack ethical leadership. Our leaders are behaving the way they want. And therefore, this has to be go inside. That what I want is, now I just publish a paper, or maybe I'll send another copy to you, is creating a design thinking of creating those values, the family values, society values, and therefore it has to be taken by democratically by all sectors, which is accepted by leadership. And then we have to put all those values like British values, the democracy, rule of law, tolerance, mutual respect. And then we need to understand that the peace begins with tolerance. So the most important value is tolerance and respect. And therefore, I'm not going to much detail, but these are comes with all the religions, that Sarva Dharma Samabhav, that all religions talk same thing. But what is most important is these values need to come by professionals and role models. And then what is important is practicing these values, and therefore preaching them is there. So my suggestion now is we need to have these values in all sectors, including doctors, and then role models have to be created, and then those role models need to teach, because senior doctors need to have role models, but they need to behave the values they talk. Then senior professionals in each sector, lawyer, judges, everywhere they need to talk. And then there has to be something like Amir Khan, who does an assertive model of putting those values. Now, surprisingly, we follow sportsmen. So sportsmen need to talk, because if they are doing some malpractice, then the whole thing goes away, because then the people say, "Arey, aap kya baat kar rahe? Aap to waisi baat kar rahe." So all these things has to come, and then the role of society is to follow these values and then use modern media to amplify. Obviously, some of the politicians who are indeed role model in ethical practices need to be also be highlighted, because the moment we have role models which are the which they follow, then the student imitate, and then the student imitate and then inculcate and they practice, and then it's a self amplifying cycle, that one role model could give thousands of students who follow the rules. I think and we need to have a lot of role played by say electronic media, because we need to have a positive journalism to create, and then these icons and role models need to be developed into developing those, because that is how those value-based education and value-based role models followed will create a sort of nationalism and patriotism. And therefore, what is required is who's are doing nice need to be marketed, because we need to do marketing of these icons. And I think all that has to be done, so that the doctors, not only doctors, everybody becomes the people with values. And I hope this conclude that mirror neurons need to be understood, and then values imbibed by imitating teachers, parents, society, they all come through mirror neurons. And therefore we need to create, and in culture and media, where electronic media and social media to work positively. At the end, I just say that everybody has to say that we have to understand. Now, this is the last but one sloka of Gita, which says, Nashto moha pratirlabda smat prachadan mayachyuta ethosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tavo. So after listening to the Gita, Arjun says, I have understood and I am going to follow. I think this is something which the role model has to say, and then every student and everybody will say that we will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jamkar.
Thank you, Dr. Jamkar. Great presentation. And Darshika, I'm just taking over from you for a minute.
Definitely, sir. Yeah, please.
And I mean, actually, the facts have come from Dr. Jamkar, from his experience of 40 years and from his heart. Because I know when he was at the Vice Chancellor, I was also at the Medical Council, and we were fighting on these ground of ethical values and getting some courses, etc. And it was so difficult to bring the changes. My question to Dr. Pratibha Nathani, she is also into education field in one of the most prestigious colleges of the country, that's the St. Xavier's College. Do you find these changes happening in the students of the at St. Xavier's also? Because St. Xavier's is known for all alumni of St. Xavier's are known world over. So what is your experience in teaching in non-medical or non-professional atmosphere?
First of all, I would say, as you rightly mentioned, Dr. Gupta, that at Xavier's, we focus a lot on the all-round development of our students. So it's not only academics, but even, developing their personality, focusing a lot on the moral fabric of the students, the values. And for example, I'll give a very simple example. What we as St. Xavier's College do, that we have something called social involvement program, where each student who's an undergraduate student, irrespective of the stream he's in, whether it is arts, science, commerce, BMM, BMS, information technology, all of them have to do social service. And that's why we call it social involvement program, because, giving that thought that you have to give back to the society. So from our perspective as an educational institution, we try our level best to imbibe these values in our students. But I will also agree with Dr. Jamkar that, overall, when you talk about the moral fabric of the society, it is undergoing a lot of change. A politician involved in corruption is taken as a matter of factly thing that, okay, so what's the big deal? He's a politician. He can do corruption. But the same thing, if a teacher is doing or a policeman is doing, we raise our eyebrow. So, the thought process of the people in society in general is changing. And when we talk about this change in our medical practice and the perception of the common man about doctors, I would say it's a mixed reaction, especially towards the medical fraternity, that on one hand, people are not trusting the doctor, assuming that, oh, they will fleece us, or they will be negligent, or we are not in safe hand. But at the same time, when the incidents happen that where the relative has died and they come to beat up the doctor or destroy the medical facilities there, and then the doctors are going on strike, I think it comes from the exactly opposite emotion, that the layman thinks doctor is God. And when God is doing something, he can do everything, but he can't take away your life. So the over expectation from the medical fraternity, from the doctors, is resulting in that extreme aggressive behavior. That, okay, you couldn't save my relative and therefore you should be beaten up. So it's too much of trust on one hand and lack of trust on the other hand. It's a very confused emotion, I would say, because these are the new developments where we see, oh, the patient died and people have beaten up the doctor. That never used to happen earlier. So something has gone wrong with the thought process. And as an academician who's 24/7 dealing with students over 25 years now that I've been teaching, we definitely see a shift in the values and ethics with which the students come to education institutions, not only in my college, but as I said, as an academician, we do deal with the younger generation. And maybe what was something as a taboo for us, it's not a taboo anymore. Something which was ethically wrong for our generation, now it is considered to be cool. And certainly there is a change. All of it is not negative, but all of it is also not positive. That's what I would say, and it applies in case of medical fraternity and the layman's reaction also.
Gupta, I want to add one point. Shall I?
Yeah, please.
Now, if you see overall the management of COVID, there was a total failure of healthcare administration. Not only in India, in West. Western societies were preparing themselves as a nuclear deterrent. And they were investing billions of dollars in creating those processes, whereas they didn't pay much attention to a healthcare administration. That a small virus is going to kill. Far behind. Because our healthcare budget, now today I was impressed, that is now 4.53%. And then we have never thought that will require a bigger budget. So it is a total failure of healthcare management and healthcare budget and healthcare whole, what is called a philosophy. But when the patient dies, because there is no oxygen or because there is no ICU bed, the patient treats a doctor as responsible. He's not going to give oxygen. He's not going to give ICU bed. And that guy who is in the PPE kit for hours together, you have to believe that he even can't pass urine, he can't pass motion, he can't eat. And once you're inside that PPE kit, you sweat. It's such a horrible feeling. And that guy sitting and there for hours together and trying to save your life. And doctors are not God. At the end, everybody dies. And when somebody dies, patients think it's a failure of the system, but then he's first a contact person. That's why they are violent. Actually, that violence is not directed against our doctor, it's against the system. But then who is suffering? That same guy who is working. In second wave, 760 doctors died. What is society doing for them? Nothing. On the contrary, all those who are died from the corporate sector or private sector, Society is not even giving anything to their kith and kin to find out how they will survive. So I think this whole attitude, we need to understand it's not against doctors, but then it is reflected to the doctors. That is the sad story. Thank you.
I would like Dr. Pandya to also briefly tell us about how Dr. Jamkar just mentioned about the healthcare preparedness for the COVID. So, since you have been serving in the UK, how do you see as an outsider how India is doing, and how, what have been our mistakes here?
Well, I can't go as far as Professor Jamkar interpretation, because it's a very risky business to even speak about India. Sitting here, probably I won't be allowed to visit India if I say something. But no, I think to be fair, I think let me give you my thought of. I think both speakers before me raised a number of issues which are overlapping, and I think it cuts across the entire medical fraternity across the world. And I think the way I look at it, the medical fraternity is not an exclusive part of some other thing. They are part of a society. They are the one who actually, with the knowledge and command of experience, can actually be very effective in terms of influencing the change of mode of the people's thinking as well. And I think, by and large, doctors have been regarded as a god. But I think there's a much more sinister area which we have not been addressing, and that is the whole medical fraternity as a professional group have not addressed itself to bring it down to the best capacity it can deliver. Let me go back to some issues. You see, doctors, there are two levels of providers. There's a doctors, I could see them as service provider, whether it's a senior doctor or consultant surgeon, or maybe people working under them. They come under a provider, and in a providers come from two levels. One is the one who owns the corporates, and the one who owns the small clinics and big clinics and make their life earning from that. The other ones who work for them, and those who work for them are probably, and the ones who set up private clinics as well as the work control the public sector clinics, etc. They are governed by legislation, regulations, and what you call monitoring facilities, whatever the government is putting across. So when those regulations and this inspectorate and other agency gets haywire, yeah, that's where the whole thing becomes shaky. You have to accept that fact. That is where the relationship actually is being molded between the medical profession and the people, the service provider. The service are the outcome. And if we don't pay attention to the way we design our services, strategic planning, including the training, and what Professor Jamkar has mentioned about the quality of teaching in terms of values, etc., it comes from there. The leaders in the field have to show that leadership. It has to come from leadership level to show examples of managing them. You see, there are two aspects to leadership, and leadership is very critical in this one. We often consider leadership is like, I have a 20 staff working under me. That's not leadership. Leadership is about individual behavior and conduct. And that conduct comes to, even a cleaner has to have a leadership quality in the person. And so we have to understand the concept of leadership. And obviously from that evolves your presence in managing your staff and others. So it takes on, people do take on from that. In Britain, I think, and other countries, one thing I've noticed is very clear, that the whole system behaves in a culture where if you're doing something dodgy, you get people complaining, and then GMC or CQC, which is for the institutions, will come heavily on you, and then you will have nowhere to hide. And also the people can complain, which is followed. So whole structure allows that process to find out what's going wrong, pick up those who make mistakes or people who are crooked, and deal with it, either retraining it or sacking them or whatever is to be done. So confidence building of the users of services is very paramount. And when you're teaching values, it will be dangerous to bring a sort of one corner ideology. It's important to have a professional ethics of leadership. where you care for a patient's outcome. And in that concept, your behavior, your standard, everything has to come in that level. And checks and balances is very important. And without checks and balances, no matter how many regulations you have, how much you're teaching to people, it won't go anywhere. In UK, most of the GPs will tell you, most of the consultants will tell you, they go to work and they're scared stiff. Something might go wrong, because then something goes wrong, a nurse would complain, a member of staff, member of public will complain, and a GMC will virtually, we from BABAPIO, we used to deal with so many cases where we said, this guy shouldn't be even doctor. So this is something where professionals in India needs to now take care of control of the agenda. What is it for? Is it about patient-centric services, or is it about clientele service where you make money? I mean, no, private sector has a role to play, but unless you shape up, the rest will be just a academic debate. The other thing I was in the last year to GAPIO's president, Sibalji. I said to him, a bunch of rich corporate guys sitting together and deciding what is good for poor people. Engage with them, listen to them, and get your foot inside, because the most private sector has the most influential people of a group in India who can actually tell a minister that back off. They need to say to the minister, we will take care of the professional side of it. Then the money will come. I think money is not an object in India. It's the way it's carved out to strengthen. Look at the Ayushman Bharat. It should have been a fantastic scheme. 2 years, you could have made it like a working clinics, not able to monitor cases or able to distribute vaccines. Nothing. It's become a kind of insurance agency. So the medical profession the leaders have to behave and get together, and then this patient-centric approach has to be brought back. It's only then the rest of the culture will fit in. That's what I'm generally saying, that in response to both of you. I hope I have not created a controversy, but I think that's how I see it. Because the politicians can do anything. I think Prime Minister can do it, but the experts and professionals need to be able to say things without fear, and that needs to be taken. If you don't influence the media yourself as a sector, nobody will do it. But because the politicians will be able to favor people, rise up people, demolish this IMA, whatever it is, and replace with something else, and there's nothing you can do about it, because that's the state of health at the moment. The professional, highly skilled professional, people like Professor Jamkar and Professor Gupta, they are okay in their own profession, but in terms of power base, they don't care what you say. They don't care. So I think there is a scope for program for saying, how do we, the professional leaders in medical field, bring up the fraternity who is actually looking at patient-centric, and the next generation is trained to be patient-centric, to be professional leaders. And leaders mean not managing staff and controlling big hospitals, but their own conduct.
Right. Dr. Gupta, you would want to comment on what just
to add one point that Dr. Pandya has said about the role of GMC. I think that made a difference between the British system and the Indian system. Having worked at the Medical Council of India, I know how difficult it was. Called as a toothless tiger. Even the tiger part has been taken away from the NMC, and it has got no control. It is only a recommendatory body. It has to recommend to the Ministry of Health, and then Ministry of Health will decide what action to be taken. So I think the regulatory body has to given full powers to take proper action, and then only we can actually guide the doctors and professionals, etc., how to work on that side. That's a very, very important point Mr. Pandya has mentioned about this.
Professor Gupta, just 1 second, if I can interject. When I saw 70 children died in the Gorakhpur hospital, there was a lot of, I published another publication, which is a political social magazine, and I wrote it in about this thing, what the medical profession is doing about it. Where is the monitoring of the local committees, etc.? And I had a ton of bricks from India saying, why are you writing negative things about India? You have 70 children died. You need to follow a process and procedures with the most senior doctors looking into it, saying, where did we go wrong? Yeah, because if you don't do it, who else is going to do it? Because people out there, not even your ministers are hardly seven standard pass. What can they understand about healthcare? So the responsibility lies on the most senior doctors like yourself to find a position of influence and change that.
I think the education of politicians has nothing to do. We have highly educated, Western educated people which are most corrupt. So I think education has nothing to do.
Because the system. System.
I just want to add and take the thread of Dr. Pandya further. I just want to share what my thoughts are. This is actually the second question Dr. Gupta is going to ask.
Yes.
The screen sharing is stopped. If you could just share your screen again. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Why it not going down? Okay.
Huh.
So taking the thread further, as a doctor, as a professional, what I'm doing to do. I think we need to set up our own rules. So now everybody is talking about ethics. So why not find out that each doctor is ethical? So I work with the system in a persistent systems where every 6 months they give us some questionnaires to find out, are you ethical? So medical council should have a questionnaire every year, and which it has to be scenario based. Suppose something has happened, how you behave, 4 options, and one of them is only ethical. And therefore, I think what is being followed by corporate industry has to be followed with professionals. Sometimes doctors do not know that they are unethical. So this becomes an awareness. And I think it's not only for doctors, it's for all professionals. They should follow this pattern to find out how much ethical they are. I'll take thread again that once we make a mistake and patient complains, we are not creating any redressal system at all. So I had been fighting with all professional organizations, like say FIXI and IMA and everybody, that we should have our own organization to have a redress the patient's complaint, because we are not perfect. We make mistakes. And then the moment it goes to any professional organization, we try to cover each other. So we should have an independent committee. We should be headed by a retired judge, maybe vice chancellor or somebody, where all members from all sectors, and then doctors should be only consultant to present, and they should have no right to vote. And any complication happens, there has to be an appropriate compensation. We need to have a specially designed insurance, so that we need to accept the legitimate mistakes, give an apology. And I think this whole system, if we create, then patients will think that doctors are acting against themselves, and therefore the violence against patients organizations, surgery, medicine, everywhere, that if you create a system like this, the patients will think that there is redressal. Okay, thank you.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I think you know what India needs at the moment, and I think this I'm all sincere, and I did mention to Ashokji some time back. You don't have an observatory which is independent, so you don't know what's happening. You pick up from here, pick up from there, and we're trying to create another bodies and so on. I think there has to be a commitment by some professionals to set up an observatory. An observatory will look at these issues, do research, do a survey by experts, and it will give some indications of the next agenda we need to abort in terms of training, in terms of monitoring, because you have a very part of things that you don't even know which doctors are actually qualified. Don't have any proper feedback. Ordinary people are not going to complain. People with money, they will complain. They'll be somehow bought off, and so on. So an observatory on healthcare is a must. We'll have two wings. One is a public sector, the public users benefit issues, and the other one is a professional development. Unless you assess these things genuinely, you are not able to give a prescription. And then once you have it, you are in a better shape to deal with it. This is something which people need to take on board, because at the moment, all over region state, we don't know what's happening. Little dribbles and drabs, little public relations, so all this needs to be replaced by somebody called a collective, central, high quality thinker people to have an observatory. And I think that's where you employ people who really have the capacity to do legal understanding, not taking up cases at the moment, but to actually understand where the next step would be going. So that you can assess better, you can pressurize the government saying your system is faulty these places, or your data is wrong. And even they don't have data, at least you have some data which you can play with, because without data, without understanding, sometimes we go faff in dark. And that's my suggestion at the moment.
I got a solution. I got a solution to Dr. Pandya's thing, to Pratibhaji.
Yeah,
Taking
I just wanted to add something here when we're talking about the ethical issues in the medical fraternity. I mean, how can that be done? So I was assuming that we are going to talk more COVID-centric, issues related with COVID and how we have dealt with it. Now, here comes the ethical part of it. That as a layperson, I understand that the doctors are not they're not responsible for getting the oxygen cylinders or other such technical requirements. But this is from my personal experience that I am sharing here. The remdesivir, that medicine, suddenly it became a magical solution to deal with COVID. And for a while, remdesivir became the medicine, and people were paying 15,000, 30,000, 40,000, 70,000. You ask for the amount and they were ready to pay it. There have been instances where the doctors have said that get me 3 injections of remdesivir, and they take over the injection. Maybe they have apply 1 injection, and then you don't know what happened to the 2 remaining injections, and the family then starts questioning, and then the doubts begin. And then later on, you're told that remdesivir has no role to play in curing COVID or helping COVID. So the point I'm trying to make here is 2. One is the ethical make of the hospital concern, or maybe the management, and also the involvement of the doctors who are prescribing remdesivir, and then not injecting it in the patient in the presence of the family, because they are apprehensive about something so expensive that you have asked me to buy, and I don't know whether you're giving it to my patient or you're selling it otherwise. And second is that when something like COVID comes up, for which we are not ready, we are not prepared, we don't know what is to be done and what is going to cure it. If a medicine is only at the experimental level, as a layperson, I feel that there should be more clarity about it. And rather than making it feel that as if it is the life-saving drug, the relatives, if they are told that, okay, we are trying to help the patient with this, we are not too sure about the outcome. That again will make the patient's relatives more practical. They will be ready for any kind of unforeseen outcome. Rather than thinking that, okay, fine, ye Ramban ilaj hai and I've got it, and now Sanjeevani Boti de di, and now my patient cannot die. So that, little of information sharing, as Dr. Pandya said, the little information sharing with the patient, the relatives of the patient, that this can be the possible outcome, that communication is very important. And definitely the ethical question here in this case definitely comes up, that, oxygen cylinders sold in the black market, or medicines sold in black market, and we don't know whether it checked exactly it was given it to the people or not. And Dr. Pandya, you may have been trolled by netizens, the new breed of communicators, but don't worry, nobody will stop you from coming to India if you criticize India.
No.
That doesn't happen in this country. And I'm sure as an Indian, you know that.
It happened to me in UK, so I know it's not happening. No, I think your 2 point, if I may pick up.
Yes.
You see, all the medical facilities, including the doctors, they are governed by the, as we call it in England, fish stinks from the head. If the system doesn't support a structure of both, I'm very honest. You find any family, and if you say, look, we don't have this facility, or I don't have a skill, they're willing to accept it, provided you don't trust. From on topward downward, there is totally mismanagement, as Professor Jamkar has said, whatever reasons may be, where the information should have been flown down scientifically has been totally damaged. Yeah. And because of that, the institutions where good people are trying to do something good have been weakened, because the institute bosses, as you said, the moral ethics, they wanted to make big kill on money from the government as well as public. So eventually, instead of finding solutions to challenges, we end up people who actually utilizing the system to make big money. At the end of the day, you lost confidence with people. Researchers who come out with something, they're given a no information, and even they do it, the fish doesn't buy that. So I'm saying to you, it's very easy for us to sit down and talk about ethical issues and in one go and say tomorrow things will change. But if the leaders in the healthcare system are not able to look into the eyes of the power base and say, hold on a second, your party policy is wrong, your government department assessment is wrong. Unless you do that, you cannot teach ethics to anybody, because your system, your hospital may not have access to paying 550 crore rupees to some politicians to get oxygen delivered. So I think there is a lot of complication of social economic dimension on the community level, but there's a much more complicated of the whole public-private sector management is so skewed that it's trying to fix with the different. So I feel ethics is one thing, but if you don't have a monitoring system to actually punish, like if
Accountability.
how many doctors get actually noted for misbehavior or something like that? No, I mean, that's why I'm saying the system has to internal system. So the first stage of this thing is to actually take stock of it by some good people, and that's why I call it observatory. In UK, there's one observatory now which is independent. So there will be a lot of things like King's Fund, and I think Dr. Ashok Gupta and Jamkar, you know that like King's Fund and other bodies, they pull out things. They don't wait. They don't hold punches. So I think then educating the party line leadership to saying, look, these are the real values, because every parties you look at, they got a health spokesperson, and so our job is to educate them as well. You see, so so of course, if there's no medicine, nobody could do anything about it. But the medicine comes, at least we know the value of it. And then we can assist in controlling, making sure it's delivered in right place at right time. So I think you're right. It's at the moment I'm very frustrated by saying that ethics and the values are all over the places, all over the places.
I just want to add, I agree with you. Now we have a lot of black ships in doctors, because doctors are not coming from heaven. They are part of the society.
Correct.
Whatever bad the society has, we inherit.
Yes.
But the problem is, the population of black sheep might be 2%, 3%. But then with the netizens and social media and electronic media, this is so much amplified that the perception of the society is that every doctor is like that. So we need to change that perception. We're not saying that we don't have bad doctors.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. But if you have a way of measuring it properly,
the problem is amplification. The print media, electronic media, one somebody doing some nonsense somewhere, they go on showing a breaking news. And nobody shows now 27 crore people are vaccinated. Nobody appreciates.
Yeah.
What comes on electronic media? There is no vaccine in Vasai.
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. But because the media is not anyone's control. If that media is a bot, that media who are deliberate. So if people die, they don't even show the figures. So I think
that's why I think at present, after doctors or professionals, the only agency which requires to be ethical or practical is media.
Positive
because they are killing. They are killing.
I want to add the point, Dr. Jamkar and with Dr. Pandya. I mean, I have worked in a COVID hospital, although I was honorary at GT Hospital and Bombay Hospital. And during the peak time, you have to be there to believe how much stressful the resident doctors and junior doctors are there. Working non-stop for 20 hours, 24 hours and at stretch, wearing PPE kit, looking after looking like, and all those sick patients and seeing patients dying in front of them. It's such a torture for young people. And particularly in Indian scenario, when the patient-doctor ratio, like corporation has reserved 85% of the bed in the hospital, and hospital is to manage with a limited staff, limited nurses, limited ward boys, and everything has to be then responded by the resident doctors to attend to that. So in a critical situation like this, I think society needs to understand the stress of under which condition they are working, and they must reciprocate. And I always raise a question, when they know the health system is failing, the doctors' manpower is failing, why can't the society, some able-bodied, intelligent people come forward and say, yes, we will take care of the non-vital part of the hospital administration, we'll take care of the supply chain of the equipment, supply chain, maintenance of the oxygen supply, maintenance of the ventilators. I mean, none of them has come forward. Even the ventilators are not working. They require some cleaning, they require some repair, etc. And I think this is a big question which I want to ask Pratibha also. What is the reciprocity coming from society at this critical time? Because it is not a pandemic, only limited doctors. It is a pandemic which is affecting the life of everyone. And why only doctors should be held responsible? And Dr. Jamkar has said the media has to play a very important and vital role of not spreading the wrong. I said one doctor has done something, there will be a whole 4 days together, it will be in the channel, as if the entire doctor is there. I think we need to be monitoring this, and maybe Pratibha can fix up this media issue also.
No, I wouldn't say fix up, but yes, what you are saying, Dr. Gupta, is a very, very valid point, that rather than focusing on the positive, as Dr. Jamkar said, that so many crores of people have been vaccinated. If you look at the population of India, 139 crore people. We have so many different countries within one India. I don't know, it is very unfair to say that, oh, this country has vaccinated all its people, and look at us. You have to look at the size, the volume, the number of people, and as Dr. Gupta rightly said, the patient-doctor ratio. And we need to focus on the positive more than focusing on the negative. So that I completely agree, that in between, although media did show in the first wave, they did show in the news channel that how some female doctors, lady doctors, leaving their young children at home, they were...
No, you're gone on mute. Huh?
Dr. Pratibha, you've been muted. Yeah.
Yeah, they reached back home after 3 months. They met their young kids after 3 months. I mean, how difficult it is for a mother. So I agree with Dr. Jamkar that you do have black sheeps everywhere. But at a time like COVID, where it is actually a matter of life and death, you think you got COVID, that means the next stage is death and only doctor can save you. As I said, the over expectation from the medical fraternity, that is something which has gone completely out of sync, out of balance. And somewhere that communication is important. And I agree with Dr. Gupta that there has to be some kind of guideline for the media. To what extent can they exaggerate a breaking news? And is that news? I mean, I always tell my students that nowadays in the media, especially in the print and news channels, you don't get to see news. You only get to see views. The fact of the matter is that you give us the news and we will form our views. The media is thinking on our behalf. They are deciding who's the culprit. They are deciding who's the judge. They are pronouncing the judgment. And that's the end of the matter. So I agree, but I think it's everybody sharing the responsibility equally. That becomes so more important. That's what I think.
I think one point I want to add here, what you mentioned about the injections and medications, actually these directions are coming from ICMR and from the Ministry of Health, and which is also guided by the WHO. So it is not the local doctors who are responsible for changing the importance of a series of treatment or B series of treatment. It is all. Unfortunately, we in India can manage anything. I mean, today in the news was there, the false vaccine were given, expired vaccines were given in the housing society. So anything can happen in the country. My question, I want to add, Dr. Jamkar also, how can we prevent the fraudulent and unproven medical product being made available through media or through some doctors? Is there any guideline or role by FDA? I mean, you are being in a regulatory body which can take action against these unproven medical products and fraudulent products.
Basically, if you see, there are so many unproved products available, and we need to take a shelter of social media, maybe Wikipedia. I just gone through the details. There are papers available about unproven drugs, and they go into hundreds. And there is a list in the Wikipedia. I'll just show you. Now, there is a parallel pandemic of medical misinformation. And then we can see there's a paper available which says, now this is a list of unproven drugs in Wikipedia. So what is required is to find out that all these unproven drugs need to be given a shelter of a social media, maybe WhatsApp and everything, so that they will agree. But then what happens is the positive things come late and negative things come first. Therefore, I think we need to take help of a common sense and media to find out how bad it is. Thank you.
Dr. Jamkar, I have another question to add into what continuity. How would you direct or suggest a doctor, treating doctor, to triage the resources available to him and decide which patient should be given importance in terms of putting on a ventilator, putting on a high-end treatment? Is there any guideline would you give to some of the colleagues?
I think, Dr. Gupta, I will take this question first, which you have given me, because that is something which is going to have a long-term effect.
Yes.
All with the COVID crisis, have you learned something? And here, I just quote from Dr. Pandya, that he just gave in this article, that all forms of inequality, the injustice in the healthcare is the most shocking. And there's so much inequality now available. And what we're going to do about that inequality? So my suggestion is, when there is a total failure of management, and then we are finding out only, say, faults and not highlighting good things. But let me say, and proudly, that as a nation, with all those limited resources, we did extremely well. What we're doing is what is called as a missing child syndrome. That something wrong happens, we're just finding out that missing child. And we in India, we have habit of politicizing everything. There is politics everywhere except in politics. And if you see all this healthcare management, there is no proper representation of healthcare professionals. When even lockdowns and everything, they are decided by politicians, and there is no appreciation. So what I'm trying to think is all this pandemic management, healthcare workers need to be given understanding. And what I want to give ahead, if you don't want the third wave, or maybe if you don't want another virus epidemic, because we need to prepare ourselves for all these epidemics, which is, there will be another bat and another virus. So we need to put this on this platform, that we need to invest more in health, best. If we don't invest, we are in total failure. So healthcare investment, at least make it double. And at present, 70% of expenditure in personal account. So if you invest in health, it is very wise decision, because healthy people work better and healthy people make nation prosperous. So I'm just giving you maybe a broad outline, that there has to be a healthcare planning commission of India to take care of all these. And then we need to find out the healthcare workers, the specialists and all that. We require a lot of technicians of all the varieties, X-ray, ECG, transport, theater. We require nurses, and we need to plan for that. Second thing is pharma, because we never think, because nobody thinks together. And then medical equipments like an ECG, MRI, oxygen, whole thing has to become, and at the end, hospital beds. So I think we as a whole, we need to plan for all this in future, because this is not only done by only doctors. So I have a plan. We require nobody thinking of basic doctors, because all the time we are short of doctors. But I think basic care physicians should be at the primary center, the comprehensive health center, which is in a taluka. There has to be at least 4 specialists, 2 district hospitals. There has to be specialists in 12 branches. District hospital, there has to be super specialist, and then subspecialists at the medical colleges. So I think this whole thing had to be think in detail about, now there is no using blaming what has happened. What future? And we are a very intelligent country. We need to think of medical transportation, smart ambulances. We need to find out how we can reach to the masses with the telemedicine. We can have the drones coming down, and then robotics, and everything has to be done so that we don't have further. So what my think is, all these planning commission, all these councils, they need to come under them, because there's one council to look after. They're starting a national paramedic council. So I think this whole thing has to come, and what that called as let them be working separately and compete with each other. So what is called as a competitive healthcare nationalism, that all the sectors, private sector, municipal sector, defense sector, everybody has to come and try to find out how best healthcare we can give. And what is required, everything has to go to the people at the bottom of pyramid. And we should have what is called as an affordable excellence. Dr. Pandey has already quoted, we earn $5 billion in medical tourism. That means we are excellence. So why not everybody get that benefit? So I think this is something where I want to use this platform to convey how best we can manage in future, so that the next pandemic, we are better prepared. And by that, we give excellent healthcare to people at the bottom of pyramid. Thank you.
Can I just say, Dr. Gupta, can I make a comment?
Please.
Yeah.
I think this is fantastic. I think this is what I was trying to state, that we will charity in America. You need to make sure that the Ayushman Bharat, a model which has been created, there has to be a very systematic input into making sure the systems, even the money is going in, is developed to its maximum benefit in terms of a structure. If that doesn't exist, then everybody will be doing and nothing will be coordinated. If my prime minister in Britain has gone on to economic forum and said, we have managed everything, we got plenty of antivirus, we got trained doctors and all that, that person wouldn't be in the prime minister today in the UK, because the media would not let it go. You have a major problem at the moment. You don't have a kind of encourage. The medical profession doesn't have a proper encourage in a policy making and a system development at the moment. So whatever good ideas, as Dr. Gupta said, is got enough capacity across the country, with public sector, private sector, with medical expertise, equipment, the modern technology will save you a lot of hassle in terms of other areas. But the money is enough. I've never thought last decade that there's no problem with money. It's a distribution of money and making sure that it's devolved properly at a different level with autonomy. And that is something which is your biggest challenge. And the model you suggested, if you look at Ayushman Bharat, it's all said there. So I think pressurizing from an independent assessment of what's happening to making sure agenda of influencing change and a culture change, because this is where the culture change will come in. The culture change of government behaving and the people in government, like we have a what you call NICE, which monitors drugs and implements. If you got a wrong drug going in a street, the police will come heavy on those guys. So there is a whole gap of encourage to put everything back into the system is missing. So I would say that your model is very good, and I like that model. And I think this is something which you need to now make it in some form of structure, where it becomes more influence for change rather than prescriptive much more. I think that is what is missing. And I think if you're talking about accessibility, is affordability has to be counted for, because with a large number of population cannot afford something, you can't have billions being spent on a private sector where people can afford to get it. I mean, it should be complementary. Private sector should be added value benefit, but public sector cannot rely on the charities of volunteers. In Britain, when COVID came in, local authority health departments began to collect volunteers and work with the hospital to make sure that people are allocated in the right places to provide the support and services. The retired doctors have been called back to support GPs, to support hospitals. So I think unless you provide an anchorage for this debate to grow in a very constructive manner, you will still, 5 years later, you will still be there. It may be COVID, it could be something else next time. So preparedness for meeting in which eventualities like COVID, you need to assume a structure where if they are ready for maximum utilization in absence of knowledge of what the virus would be. Yeah, that is not there. You can't go in a world international economic forum and say everything is fine, we achieved this thing, and yet you're not sure about level of vaccines. Yeah, so good work is fine, but when the confidence of the people comes, some person after person found dead because of the lack of oxygen. They are not going to bother about 5 good doctors being serving and saving lives, because the public perception changes very fast. So the structures and anchors are the main relationship builder between the professionals and the public.
I think I compliment Dr. Jamkar and Dr. Pandya. Is an excellent model you have given, but unfortunately, whenever doctors have been given the job of an administrator or policy maker, I know several of doctors who have proved to be a failure as a health minister or in the planning commission, etc. But we need to change our attitude, and we need to take more positive step in.
Sorry, Gupta ji, in UK, we don't have only doctors. We have academics and what you call administrators who are professional working with doctors. Yes. At the moment in hospitals, if you see more administrators than doctors. But yes, that's something which the system has to decide to make it more effective.
No, there's a definite need. What Dr. Jamkar has said is absolutely 100% correct. And we have been talking about, at least from the time I know, from 2011, we've been talking about restructuring the entire administration of healthcare so that it is the doctor who can decide and give suggestion how to take care of the basic fundamentals of healthcare, etc. It's a great.
Where is the kick? Where is the kick? The strength of the kick is not there. You see, you can only shift if you influence change, and that capacity has to be built up first.
But I think politicians have learned. Now, next election will be entirely won on healthcare preparedness.
Yes.
So, if all these politicians come with an Magna Charta and put all the fundings inside, people will vote because people have suffered.
There is another issue.
Poor people have more suffered, and now poor people have more votes. I think now they can change whole healthcare administration.
I think
there are other issues which will be far more attractive to voters than just health, because some money will be given here and there, and then people will be very happy.
Sir, in India, you can earn, you can become MLA by money.
Yes.
You can't become MP by money.
So bringing back the discussion to our topic, I would like to ask a direct question to the panel. It's an open question.
Yes.
Emotional exhaustion may lead to medical errors. We know that. Lack of empathy in treating patients, lower productivity and higher turnover rates. So is pre-counseling of healthcare workers before going to the front line may help, allay the concerns and provide opportunities for clarifying safety queries. So I would want the panel to maybe talk around that maybe a little.
I just can start that?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And I did an article with Professor Dr. Santosh Matolkar. He's a registrar in the Royal College of Psychiatry. The worst thing happens in a medical profession is a doctor to say, I am in trouble, I need help. So under pressure, doctors are reluctant to say, I am now burning out. That's the first area, because then in UK, there are a lot of agencies now supporting, but the problem is when they disclose that information to the regulatory bodies, it can work against them. Although they promise it, but they work against it. So yes, absolutely, the building capacity of the frontline workers, doctors, particularly junior doctors, others, to be able to cope. And then there has to be a system within the people who employ them to say, it's a duty of condor. Their employers have the duty to see the well-being of their staff. So they need to know when people are working certain hours, how they best arrange with that. Yes. If they don't do that, the poor doctor is not going to complain because he'll be out of job. This is the biggest worry, even in UK, that the GPs who are really under stress, consultants are under stress, surgeons are under stress, but they're unable to say, I need help. Because once they say that, somewhere in the file, they'll be written up saying this guy has needed help with mental health. And once they do that, they'll be in trouble. So anyway, this is what I was saying, that it is important that how managers of the profession manage to plan the work services and allocate such a way that you don't have a burnt out beyond a point.
I have a different view. Training of Indian doctors and specialists is entirely different. From beginning, we are trained to treat thousands of patients. If you come to my Sassoon OPD in surgery, we have minimum 500 patients per day. And we manage all of them. we triage, get some 25 admitted, and get operated with effective management, because we got some sort of what you call as clue. Whereas in British doctor, I worked for 1 year with the UK. One patient, they take at least half an hour. In India, in half an hour, we finish at least 10 patients. So my point of contention is we are trained to handle higher volume of patients everywhere. As a net result, once we have a lot many patients in ICU, we by and large don't break. And then if we break, obviously somebody will break. And then we have seniors available which will guide you. If the senior break, there is still more senior. So I think point of contention is our patients haven't died because of exhaustion. They died because of lack of oxygen, lack of ICU beds, lack of infrastructure, rather than medical advice, lack of drugs. So I think we need to put that point in contention. Thank you.
I think when you did the ultrasound training for us in UK, one of the things which interested me was the training of the nurses to understand and use of the ultrasound to see if there's an accident, they would actually identify bone break and etc. In UK, they have introduced pharmacist now. My son is a pharmacist. He works in a clinic, GP surgery now. So he reviews the patients, which reduces the whole workload of the GP himself or herself. So this is what I'm saying, that they know that it is the structure which employs that particular unit. They need to say, okay, where we could actually develop a second layer of expertise, bring it in as a triage and a support, so that the key doctors or surgeon would be eased off of those pressures. And you said if you are working in a military zone, or if you work in India, you of course develop this ability to deal with more patients. But sometimes you have to agree that the patient care and safety and the risk management is sometimes compromised if you deal with too many patients at the same time. I think that is something which we need to look at. Is it real thing? Is it how much we can monitor and see whether the outcomes has been compromised in some way or other? Could have done better. It's all about learning process. It's about the units itself. As you said, you want to teach your new generation a better thing, then this debate has to take place within them. There has to be monitoring. There has to be where you assess those things as a professional body. Yeah, and that's again coming back to the same issue: who is managing, who is monitoring it.
I want to add one point here. I mean, because during the first wave of COVID, there were so many NGOs and so many social workers. They were helping the patients and victims and families, but there were very few people who actually thought about giving something to resident doctors who were working there. I mean, they came begging to our alumni association. We donated more than 5,000 PPE kits. Even we sent the protein bar because they were not getting the proper food, etc. And that was a severe stress. I'm again confessing that some of the doctors were under severe stress during the first wave and second wave when they were working on COVID. And I think that's the role of I would again bring Dr. Pratibha Nathani to think about, why can't society think about junior doctors and young doctors who can be like their own children? Their stress factor, the circumstance they are working on. Why can't the society think about giving something good for doctors rather than giving free food to patient relative? Why can't they make sure that the hospital is giving them due care, etc.? I think this is my personal experience I'm sharing, but this is a very important part also, that we have to take care of the junior doctors also.
Dr. Gupta, before that, yes, I want to add one point, which Dr. Pandya was highlighted. We are not utilizing nurses in overall triage.
Yes.
And the problem is nurses all over the world in the Western societies, they are given very high importance in management. They are nurse practitioners and everywhere. Now, somehow in India, we haven't given them that responsibility. Now, a BSc nursing nurse spends 4 years after 12th, just 6 months start of doctor. And then when she goes out with a BSc nursing, where she's highly trained with all technology, we pay them 20,000 rupees, 25,000 rupees. As a net result, talent doesn't go there. And whatever talent they are there, we are not utilizing. I think we need to take shelter that we need to utilize all nurses for triage and all that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a very good point, Dr. Jamkar.
Right. Sir, also Dr. Gupta was, before Dr. Jamkar started his presentation, Dr. Gupta, you wanted to ask some question regarding the fraudulent practices and
Yes.
how we can deal with them?
Yeah, fraudulent and fraudulent, Dr. mentioned also, but more important, like he said, there's many instances where there's a limited number of resources, the ICU bed. Is doctors justified and justifiably can prove that he can triage the resources and give preference to a patient rather than giving to other patient who, there are some stories that one old gentleman gave his ICU bed and his oxygen to somebody younger, but that's only from the media point of view when they prove. So is there a guideline or would you suggest doctors are free to take decision or they should be guided by certain principles of the viability of the efforts? And we know that some patients are more prone to succumb, some patients are better chances of recovery, etc. So is doctor ethically correct in taking that decision on triage of the resources, both from the social point of view and from the medical point of view?
Dr. Jamkar, you would want to comment on that?
I think ethically they are wrong, but practically they might be correct. But I think anybody doing that way, the doctor will carry a guilt complex all the time. And I think it's a failure of system and where a doctor is being exposed. So my point of contention is we are not doing well to find out the whole status of ecosystem. So here the technology comes. Now all our hospitals are with EMR and EHR. And we have never utilized those services to find out how exactly ICU beds are available. Now, if there's something called as the HLA-7 system, where whole ecosystem of ICU and beds could be available on a platform. And we are not trying to use that. And that's why people are coming to the hospital emergency gate and dying. And because we are never utilized. And now because I work with the technology, I work with Persistent and where we all these HLA-7 system available. We wrote to everybody that we will install all that system in hospitals of Pune so that all beds available everywhere should be seen on a dashboard. But then nobody just listens because their priority is not that. I think the answer is technology.
Yes.
Also monitoring. Is also monitoring. The technology may be there, but people not log in properly, and there are no analysis where it's coming up, so there's no quick responses to say, look, this is where available. I think this is something which, like cough in UK, we have a system where if a GP sees a patient, there are certain questions you fill up. So if in an area where there is a high prevalence of the elderly population and asthma, and suddenly the GP doesn't register 10 even patient with asthma, the region health authority will come and turn a bricks on him and say, look, how come you have only 10 patients and where the other doctors have a asthma patients of 50 or 60. So I think the checks and balance mechanism, without that, even technology will be useless.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to bring Dr. Pratibha Nathani to talk about the importance of social workers and counseling done by social workers, both to the patients which are affected and the family which are treating. The doctor's family also get equally worried about the value of the treatment, etc. Is Dr. Pratibha Nathani still there?
I think she's got dropped off from the call, sir.
Okay.
So I think once she joins, we can take up that question again. Meanwhile, since we are talking about the cultural shift in trust and accountability, so has the pandemic proved to be a huge opportunity for healthcare providers and the society to recapture the interest of the public and again regain some trust which had been lost in the process here? Dr. Pandya?
Yeah, I think we always have seen in India and other countries, when the crisis hits, people come forward to help, regardless. That culture is still there. Where the lessons are learned for both of the areas. One is the medical profession, as now we are discussing it. There's a look at what went wrong. So steep learning curve for next possible wave. but also rethinking of where we are going as a medical profession. What is something we need to now look back and say, if we can mend this, and Dr. Jamkar has come suggested many things. So I think that culture shift has come. But again, is all the converted are talking about it. The people who want to make billions and millions, they don't even care about it. Their interest is how do they get money out of the government and the people. So there is a huge starting point and learning curve. Shortage of doctors, which of course Dr. Professor Gupta has raised it previously. It needs to be followed up, saying what are we going to do about it? If we don't do in terms of both creating more professional staff and how does it fit into the government program? So those things are coming up. In terms of general public, I think there is a big shock to people who believe that the God is managing everything and everything is fine. Now they realize that is not true. We have been lied to many times, and total this in my article I've said it's a total unpreparedness was there. So there will be some alertness of looking for their own state government and their local area health system. That's another thing has been provoked. Funding, I'm not sure. The sporadic funding, I disagree with the health system because it goes nowhere. It can siphoned off. There has to be a review at the way, the level of quality of funding, the quality of funding and how it's distributed. Those things will be coming forward as a debate. But as Professor Jamkar and others said, if there is a other priority on which brings more votes, then I think all will be hoo-ha until this. I mean, in UK we have like a Baba Garba case about discrimination, and now that's gone. Everybody gone back to normal. Some other case, and then we'll jump up and down. So I think it's keeping the consistency of what Professor Jamkar and Gupta ji say that we need to make sure that momentum that is started doesn't just die. It looks at the strategic building blocks of improvement.
I think I just want to add, let us be positive. My statement is, we as a society, we did extremely well. So let us celebrate what we have done right. We are not celebrating what we have been right. Now, 1,500 doctors died. Did any media, any press have one occasion where a doctor has refused to work, nurses has refused to work, or healthcare professional worker has refused to work? So this is values that we want to work when we are in calamity and crisis. Whole society just moved on. There was so much of philanthropic movement across the country that I think that is the most thing that can happen. So I'm really positive that I'm proud to be an Indian, that we work hard, all sectors of society, that everybody was trying to help. People were giving dabbas, people were giving money, people were giving drugs, the donations pouring, every sector was trying to help others. I think let us celebrate that and say, we did extremely well. Of course, the magnitude of calamity was so big that we were not able to reach. At the same time, in absence of all these, we had far more bigger disaster.
Correct. Dr. Gupta, any comments from your end, sir?
Yeah, I think both Dr. Jamkar has very rightly said. I mean, but we need a pandemic to wake up and to bring our resources. I mean, healthcare infrastructure has been crumbling over a period of time. I mean, all of us have seen in early days, the medical colleges are supposed to be the best equipped and best run medical institutions where the complex of the complex surgery would be performed. Over the last 50 years, the situation has changed. People's perception, if you go to medical college, they are not sure of coming out safely. So they all prefer to go to private hospital setup. I'm having worked in private hospital setup. I know the infrastructure in private hospitals is far superior and far much better quality than what is provided in the government, even in the teaching institutions like Grand Medical College and other places. The quality of equipment, quality of monitoring devices is much better in those things. So we have, but at the end, all society needs the same level of treatment, whether it is a rich person, whether it is a poor person. And I think that society should expect from all lawmakers.
Can I ask you a question, both of you, Dr. Professor Jamkar? You know, my Achilles heel has been accessibility through affordability. India has the largest population which has a problem of affordability now because of the economic situation is going to be worse over the next 5 years. Healthcare is going to is to both accessing the advice and diagnostic support and treatment. There's also a general well-being of the population itself is going to be a bigger issue because of the poverty level. I have a question about public sector and private sector, the role of the public sector, because gradually the public sector has been allowed to run down because the budget can go in incremental, but inflation also swallows it. But economy is a side issue. So the ethics and culture of public service, where people able to access, even they don't have money, like in Britain, that people don't have money, they can rely upon a treatment in a hospital or a GP. My knee surgery will be free of charge. My wife had a cancer, not a single penny from us, and she can recover fully. India can afford it if you look at the capacity, financial capacity. So what is the next step of which is a priority for us? Is it a public sector services and support for poor, very, very poor and the middle classes who have to sell their ornament and family savings to get a basic treatment? Something I've been worrying about it, because we can talk about healthcare in a general sense and everything, but this is where the relationship is going to strain as we go. The culture which will say, these guys are looting us, and then the private sector will double loot us. So gradual, what you call defragmenting the strength of the public sector and not utilizing Ayushman Bharat or schemes like that, inequity developing it sufficient for this kind of primary care support, etc. I'm totally confused and sometimes worried what will happen to the future healthcare system. So those who can afford it, of course, they can go to private clinic. They can have a oxygen mask at their home, have tanks at their home, whatever they can do. Or they can disappear from India for say 3-4 months in a safe place like UK. But the majority of the people, yeah, this is where frightening future I'm worried about.
I think me and Dr. Professor Jamkar, having worked in two of the largest teaching hospitals of the country, which is BJ and JJ Hospital and Medical College Nagpur, we feel that there's enough allocation of funds. The total fund allocation for these medical colleges is far more than any of the private hospitals. But it's the distribution of the fund and the utilization of the fund which has probably caused the priority of a public sector undertaking maybe a little different than the private undertaking. And private undertaking are more focused into revenue generation model rather than a service model. But somewhere or other, I mean, each one has got an equal right to get the best of the treatment. That's my philosophy. And irrespective of, I mean, I approve the Bombay Hospital model where there are 30% beds are free, where even the poor person can access the treatment. But that model is not being practiced in many of the private sector hospitals. But some of the public sector institutions should raise the level of their efficiency and level of this thing, that private sector should say, yes, we are going to follow that, and we are still deficient than the public sector. And I think that's the day I'm waiting for it to come. And Professor Jamkar can give some guideline how to improve the minimum level. And we were discussing about at one time in the meeting. I mean, there is no bar of excellence. You can. I mean, there was a minimum requirement of passing percentage. And I remember I did talk to Professor Jamkar that there is no limit. You can go beyond the minimum level. There is no bar for excellence. You can cross the bar of excellence. So this is the time I'm waiting for public sector undertaking to cross the bar of excellence in healthcare. Yeah, Professor.
How about adopting a clinic in a rural area and others by those who have plenty big hospitals, private sector, who can afford, where the standards could be improved? I mean, that's another way of assisting the private sector.
That's being done by big chains. Apollo Hospital has more than 50 such villages under them. So my point of contention is everybody has role to play. So that's why there has to be what is called as a competitive excellence. Let private sector grow. Let them have some more money so that they can do charity.
Yeah.
Sector grow.
Even in tax, you can take some.
Government sector just collapses because of number. So I was in Sassoon. Per year, operations done by Sassoon Hospital are in 500,000. Because there is no system of what is called as a progressive reference. Sitting in Sassoon OPD of 500 patients in surgery, I did of breast, and at the same time I treat thorn prick. So because there is no role for the reference that primary health center, secondary health center, everybody has to do what they are supposed to do, and then all that thing to be done by medical college will be done by medical college. In India, other than medical colleges, rest of the public health system has failed because everything is going to the private sector. So a civil surgeon or a specialist in a district hospital does only practice, and he doesn't pay attention to the people who are in his ward. So I think that is an entirely different story. There is more of ethics there. So I think let everybody work. Defense sector, municipal sector, there are various sectors available, and as Dr. Gupta said, there is enough money given to everybody. Now don't look behind. Now the Sosun hospital is far more equipped because we have spent almost 2,000 crore rupees in the last 5 years in developing Sosun. Maybe 4,000 crore rupees in the last 5 years in developing a grand medical college. So let us see that everybody has a role to play. There has to be competition, and if the private sector grows, it's still better because at least those who can afford, they can go there. Those who cannot afford, they can come to the public sector. So I think a competitive federalism, what word is competitive federalism has to be there, and then everybody will grow. And believe me, everybody has to remember that gentleman at the bottom of pyramid has to be your concern. Thank you.
I think that's the key. The person at the bottom of the pyramid has to be taken care, irrespective of whatever.
Patient-centric.
Yes, patients, yeah.
Patient-centric.
Since we're talking about affordability, what are your views on universal health coverage for India, for a country like India?
I think, look, it is you see, if you have a scheme like in UK, what happened in UK was the worst hit by the war. Economically, it was crashed. So it provided a welfare scheme. A welfare scheme with the government put in the money, whether they bring from insurance company or other, it doesn't matter. The evolution of the whole public, the what we call a scheme like that has to be very realistic. You need to have over a period of plan which people, professional people and others actually look at realistically, and then it develop. Now, if you got a Ayushman Bharat and none of this money is going to look after on Ayushman Bharat grow regional and local clinics, what are you going to do with insurance? Because COVID-like thing, insurance will be swallowed 2 lakh rupees by doctors anyway. That's what public say. If I have a problem, just little bit problem, my local doctor will swallow 2 lakh rupees just like that, because they will do X-rays and blood tests, which are even not necessary. So there has to be a mechanism and delivery plan so that the money can grow. Private sector can be playing role, but private sector, as I said, in health tourism, huge money is brought in. Even they can take some percentage out of that. All this has to be combined to actually good delivery of improvement, so that the modern technology, and I'm saying the Professor Jamkar and others agree, today's modern technology of monitoring and supporting what you call telemedicine, others at the rural areas could save huge amount of money in terms of patient care. And that should be there, automatically developed over a period of next decade. And this has to be a very open and transparent planning, and so that it can be looked at, amended, etc. That should be done, where the people like Jamkarji and Guptaji can be actually taken in confidence by the government, saying, we're listening to you. Let's deliver these things. It's not about me did it, I did it kind of thing. It has to be delivered that way. So it brings some good results, because if 10 years time a poor guy goes into his health is monitored, diabetes is monitored, etc., and given advice, because he got to monitor at home, some satellite signal will go and a consultant will give advice. So it will stabilize a lot of pressures on medical professionals. It will develop some more frontline workers who doesn't require a highly skilled capacity. So I think this is something which is still loose. If we put it in a, as I keep saying, anchor, some kind of anchor and structure development, it will work, because the capacity is there, the finances is there, the people are there. And it's a question of distributing and focusing on what we want to get out in the next 5-10 years time.
Also, Dr. Pandya mentioned a couple of times that the system needs to support, correct? But I think the system is, of course, made up of the doctors only. I feel I'm not talking about the politicians here, but the higher system in any hospital or in the healthcare community. So I would want your expert views on the sense of ownership and responsibility when it comes to taking responsibility for any actions that have been done by the doctors.
You see, I think previous speakers have raised the issue about the ownership in terms of ethics and everything. If I am a good manager, the good management principles and good governance is all about that. If I'm a more senior consultant, I got a big hospital to run. I sit down like any other project, whether it's a dam project or whether it's a other project or a military commander. They will sit down and say, okay, what do I have? How do I make it the best? What we call the professional excellence into this. What do I do? How many people I? All this is to be any good manager will produce. It will produce the assistance development, what you call create their own ability, strengthen them, empowerment there. So every structure is developing with some same ideal that we are professional excellence in terms of our leadership as a managers. In a management, even first class student, first year student also learn good things. But what we have seen is the financial what you call attractions have swayed the whole system to dislodge and run separately as an individual benefit. So I think until the good professionals within doctors, they will come together and say, no, we have to salvage our leadership, we have to salvage our ethics, and we have to manage, provide structures which can be filtered downwards in training and learning lessons and learning role models. If you don't do that, it will swing between exploiting people and playing with politicians, and there will be no accountability. Because accountability grows, then everything is all here and talk. So that is why I keep saying, centrally, good doctors will have to come together. I don't know about Indian Medical Association, but what I heard in the past, it was a bit not nice. So they need to take balance, and they took responsibility for sorting out their own profession quality standards. And once they do that, it means bad doctors have been told, go, you cannot practice. Or monitor how many doctors are there, who got licenses, who are not trained, who require more training. All this is something part of good management comes. It doesn't require any new dream world at all. And within that, I'm sure things will start taking shape. People will have confidence. The politicians will be afraid to temper with you. But when they can defragment you between the rich and the poor doctors, the best poor doctor will be bought off to give more little bit cakes, and he'll be happy or she'll be happy. And the people who are very brilliant, they will be just doing the labor work. So I think there is a ownership, regaining capturing the power back into the fold of the fraternity, and then be par with the Western countries and other developed countries. Say how they operate, can we bring it to our them? It's not about skills. It's not how brilliant you are a surgeon or not. It's the structure itself, the infrastructure, which sets up your criteria, sets up your culture within how you operate, so that everybody has to fit in there.
I
I think as regards Indian doctors are concerned, there is far more accountability that we have. But if you want to increase the accountability, we need to put that whole system of a family physician, where a doctor was a part of family. With all these growth everywhere, where the concept of family physician has gone, and therefore there is some eroding of accountability. At the same time, even the specialist and everybody in India is still accountable. And believe me, we have the best healthcare system in the world. I spent some time in England, I spent some time in UK. You have a cough, you go to GP in UK, and then he says, take an X-ray. And you get an appointment after 6 months. By the time you go there, he asks you, why did you come? For cough, that is already disappeared. I think, we can't change doctor there. NHS, everywhere there is NHS. Same thing happens in USA. Now I have a shoulder pain. I'm insured there. The moment I want a doctor, the appointment comes after 3 months. And then he advises me physiotherapy. Say physiotherapist comes after 6 months. What else? And then you can't do anything. You have to go a video interview. and then they will do something. One of my patient who had an say 4, what you call it as 4 loci in prostate, and he wanted to ultrasound. The ultrasound appointment came after 3 months. By the time the 3 foci went to 6 foci. So I think we are trying to glorify all of the Western system, but believe me, the best medical care for anybody is available in India.
No, Professor Jamkar, I'm not talking about comparing. I'm saying that when you have your own system, every system needs to play around to shape it properly. So that is important. Whether you see comparison with the Western American system itself, it's a long way away. There are faults in everywhere, but if we want to, given the chaos we've seen, and we have to accept there was a chaos, there are other issues we have to deal with, which may not be common in UK. Maybe other issues UK has got not common with America. So whatever shape you want to go into or structure you want to go in, you need the time to rethink, because the COVID has resurrected a lot of concerns. And I think this is an opportunity to look at how you do, because that is going to train the people outside. The public outside will learn that you are reshaping yourself, that confidence, that messages. You can't have somebody telling, oh, this COVID is bad, the doctors are bad, and next day the person going to get apology. You don't have a medical structure which stands up solid with people say, yeah, we believe that. That's perfect. So I think it's time for reshaping it altogether with the way you want it. You see, the thing is, what is your vision of India's healthcare system? That is what it's about. It's not about UK, America, or China, whatever it is. It's our own system. We come so far, we learned something. The main COVID has thrown out so many critical issues for us to do it, and it's a time to shape up. And how do you shape up? How do you unite, work together to shape up is key element to all this debate.
No, I think I would just want to add a couple of comments. Having worked in both in UK and USA, and I think the system there are different. But in India, we also have some advantages of British system, some advantages of US system. But I think in view of the pandemic, what we have learned and what we probably, I will also request Dr. Jamkar to, now this crisis of pandemic has to be taught at the undergraduate and postgraduate level. There has to be a separate sort of a syllabus highlighting most important of a role of a family physician or an internal medicine physician, etc., rather than all going for the super specialty courses, etc. And same thing also should be there in the part of the curriculum for the civic society. They must also stress on how to respond to a disaster, how to respond to a critical illness like a pandemic. And this is what we have learned, and I think this is what we really need to change in our aptitude of taking care of. Our vulnerability and our aptitude to respond to a crisis has to be brought in right from the early days of student life. I think this is a very, very important lesson we must take home from the pandemic if we can tide over this crisis soon.
And going beyond, I think we need to prepare for our next pandemic, because believe me, in heart of my heart, I know whole COVID is a biological warfare which has been implanted by China. I think everybody will agree. No, Western society is also agreeing. Now, leave aside that there might be some point of contention, but we need to prepare ourselves that we have to have special people trained in epidemiology, in virology. We should have Institute of Virology with its collaboration between veterinary and human virology. And I think the whole thing going to disaster management, then we need to pay more attention to vaccinology, how fast we can create a vaccine. And this whole thing has to come with a technical know-how, that how we can use artificial intelligence in vaccinology. Because at the end, that 8-digit vaccine, which has come from the spike protein, was analyzed by an AI system. And I think the best thing that has happened with COVID is we have went into an mRNA technology to find out how fast we can develop vaccine. So I think development in vaccinology and all these things need to come ahead. These are the things to be learned. In addition, obviously, we need to look at overall healthcare management and how we can reach to the masses. I think this is one which need to be done.
I agree with you, but I think the need of healthcare manpower, the doctors, the theatre nurses, as you said, the ward boy, the technician, and this is ambulance driver. This is something which we have also must pay attention in the forthcoming pandemic, and which is very difficult to produce doctor in, which takes about 5 to 8 years for producing a doctor. So we must plan for increasing our healthcare resources.
Gupta ji, I'm part of one of the magistrate thing, and what the magistrate groups are doing now is they are going to schools and colleges. They're holding a public discussion so that people are aware of what judiciary is about. Same thing in the UK. There are a lot of GPs now have a patients forum and they talk to patients. So I think by encouraging professionals to actually share with their own patch a lot of issues, information, so that there is a confidence building and awareness, because a lot of things they're not aware. So I think as a late Dr. K.K. Agrawal, he used to publicize so much material for the doctors. There's so much small good information. This kind of thing is a part of promoting awareness in the community, so that there is a alliance with you, and their children, grandchildren will feel confident to go into the different level of entry into the medical profession. This will expand your thing. Plus also volunteers, medical volunteers would be another area. And I think from your acid victims programs, you know that earlier how do you respond to somebody who had been thrown acid on their faces? So people have to be given general assistance and educating them, so that it becomes a respectful part of that they understand. Otherwise they will be subject to rumors, bad injections. Nobody will know until 5 people died, then say yeah, they died. So I think that vacuum has to be filled with other activities. Yes.
Sir. Any comments, Dr. Gupta?
No, I think it's a very important point. We have almost come to the most of the questions have been answered, and most of the point. I think I would request Dr. Jamkar to give us a take-home message and 2 or 3 important points.
So before he gives a take-home, I have a question for Dr. Jamkar.
Yes, sorry.
And sir, since we are talking about triaging the finite resources in a pragmatic consideration on usage of life-saving medicines and vital equipment, could you guide us on the criteria for emergency use authorization? And then maybe we can end the session.
I think EUA is a new thing available. Shall I show you my slide?
Oh, sir.
Okay.
Americans rely on the FDA to evaluate whether medical products, such as drugs, diagnostic tests, and other medical devices, have been shown to be safe and effective. When a public health emergency hits, like the infectious disease outbreak we're facing with COVID-19, there may be an urgent need for products to diagnose, treat, or prevent a medical threat. In certain types of emergencies, the FDA can issue an emergency use authorization, or EUA, to provide more timely access to drugs, diagnostic tests, or other critical medical products that may help during the emergency when there are no adequate, approved, and available options. The EUA process is different than full approval of these products because in some emergency situations, we just cannot wait for all the evidence needed for full FDA approval. Instead, the FDA evaluates the options very quickly using the evidence that is available and carefully balances any known or potential risks of these unproven products with any known or potential benefits to the public of making them available during the emergency. For example, while we need to move quickly, it is not in the best interest of Americans for the FDA to allow use of a test that doesn't work as it should. False test results can contribute to the spread of an infectious disease like COVID-19. EUAs are just one of several tools the FDA can use to help make important medical products available quickly during emergencies. For more information on FDA's efforts against COVID-19, please.
I think this is all about emergency authorization, and it's available only for the pandemics and epidemics. About the drugs, about the tests, about the labs, where there are separate criteria available. But I think same thing is happening. In India, we are following global standards. As a net result, everything is available for us. Other thing which has happened, in addition to EUA, is what is called as repurposing of drugs, and where an AI system has been used to find out what drugs can be used. Now, let us say, now remdesivir wasn't used for, say, COVID. It was used for something else. And then repurposing same drug for something else was done with EUA. So I think that is something which we are trying to find out how fast we can do to treat the emergencies like a pandemic.
Which Indian, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Gupta.
Yeah, which Indian agency is, apart from ICMR, is any other agency which can give EUA certificate in Indian scenario? Or
Yeah, EUA is under FDA. It's under DCJ.
okay, that's
All the standards are global.
okay.
And by and large, all EUA done first by Western, maybe US, and because we follow UK and US.
Yes.
We need to be proud that we follow British medicine. We don't follow American medicine. So EUA is done on the same standards. But the problem is, now I did my PhD in interferon, and I was working on all these interleukins and all that. The day I read that cytokine storm is because of IL-6, and I knew there is a monoclonal antibody available against IL-6. So I wrote to everywhere in whatever media, and believe me, it might be done parallel, but then that monoclonal antibody was used concurrently. I don't know whether they listen to me. That's why I'm talking about tocilizumab.
So yes, Dr. Jamkar, any takeaway home message for our doctors here?
The first takeaway message is we need to be ethical, irrespective of what is the level of calamity, because ethics and values are going to help you. It might make you guilty, but then if you are ethical, the guilt will go away. Second thing, calamity has given you a lot of role to play, that as a nation, we need to do a healthcare planning to find out how all components of the society can be put together. Maybe doctors, pharmacists, pharma industry, medical equipment industry, hospitals. We need to think beyond and then develop our ecosystem far ahead so that the next pandemic can be taken care. And lastly, I think we did extremely well. Let us be proud that we handled it well. Maybe the calamity level magnitude was so high that we failed. At the same time, every sector of the society helped us to take for the calamity. Thank you.
One point I want to add, what Dr. Jamkar to add about this, because now we are talking about the future pandemic, talking about the third wave and where the pediatric population is likely to be affected more. So any tips for the people in the field, how they should be prepared for the third wave, particularly the pediatric population?
Pediatrician.
Any system which they must understand the difference between a ARDS and what is a multi-system.
I think there was some talk about PMIS, pediatric multi-system, but it's not exactly COVID complication. It's a complication or some set of disease with the PMIS. And only thing that can help is a mask. And now there was one survey of zero positivity to find out the kids, even though they were not even vaccinated, 35% kids were say having corona antibody positive. So I think while the whole corona wave is going on in the country, the pediatric population might have antibodies. So I suppose the third wave may not come down to our kids at all. That would be my hope, and I think I should be right.
I mean, we say, "Aapke muh mein ghee shakkar."
I'm not mistaken.
Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Pandey, any words of wisdom from your end?
No, no. I think, as Dr. Jamkar said, that a lot of good work being done by a lot of people. Goodwill is there existing in profession. Experts are there. Um, Professor Gupta and others said they do feel that there was some disjointment somewhere. But at the end of the day, I said the people who had the experience and skill come together, and they need to find a vessel to channel this program of improvement. Because if you don't have that, the debate will go fizzle out. It fizzles out most of the time. People work in different environment. Some work in private sector, one in a public sector, which is very poorly managed. So what they cannot do is overnight change anything. We from the experience now, a lot of people have learned. They know where to seek help. Probably government will wake up because elections are coming, so there'll be more support coming up now. And I think India would be better equipped to deal with the third wave, if there is a third wave, on a scale which were expected. But in terms of for medical profession, I fear that unless it grabs back the agenda but it needs an anchor. It needs a clear thinking, and I think that's the only message I can give, because other things become part of a program of influencing change in terms of training, getting more community involved, so awareness goes outside. Because if you involve general public in your discussions about what diseases, how home help is available or not, encourage others to be part of the feeling good that I want to be part of that medical support team. That will be increased. That will change the attitude of people. And the third, if you have an observatory, I can tell you, Dr. Gupta, Jamkarji, it will kick some real backside of the politicians. They will be afraid to take you on, because you have influence, not India, internationally. And that goes bad in people who go around, boast around, saying we have got this and that, and they know they haven't got it. So I think this is a influencing change for positive thing. That's the message I want to give.
Thank
Culture
you.
shift. Culture shift towards patient-centric, as you said.
Great, great. I think I just want to add a couple of points, and I want to thank again Darshika that she's extending our discussion panel for 2 hours now. Every time she's beating the record of 40 minutes to 2 hours now. But I want to put my thing that this pandemic has given an opportunity, has brought so many huge opportunity for healthcare workers and providers, both in terms of bringing new technology, AI, telemedicine, electronic gadgets, etc. is a huge opportunity. And it is a great opening for both society and the doctors to make use of it, not let it go waste. So I think society must also look at the doctors and look at the opportunities and create a platform, create an AI system where we can, and I want to share with you at this forum, I'm working with a few of the technical person in IIT Kharagpur, and we have developed a ventilator. We have developed a ventilator which has got an oxygen sensor. So it can actually, it will open the wall when the patient is breathing. Oxygen cylinder, normally once you open, it continuously, there's an outflow of oxygen. But the wall will be there, which will be controlled by a sensor on the chest, so that when the patient is inspiring, then only wall will open. So there will not be wastage of oxygen. We're also developing a technology where the PSA-based oxygen concentrator will be regenerating another oxygen, which is 40% more than the current oxygen concentrator. And this is all done by the IIT technology. One of the IIT professors is also developing a testing kit, which is based on the nucleic acid based, and which will be able to undertake tests in 45 minutes. And at the same time, we can do 40 to 100 tests with the same test kit. So these have provided great opportunity for development, both science, technology, human behavior, ethics, and moral. I think we must not let it go waste. That's my thing, and we must adapt to the situation. And that's a great opportunity for us to learn.
I forgot something. That is an excellent idea, but just something for Professor Jamkar, that junior doctors or other doctors who are in the front line needs to be given a special training. Courses needs to be developed with practical role play to what you call a conflict resolution management, because that would be critical in terms of knowing which patients and family can cause and how to deal with them in a crisis situation, because few words, few body language can make the difference between you get beaten up Yeah. So and how to be convey the message which really you know. So I think it's something, it's a big subject, and it probably with role play model training would be something go a long way.
And at the end, I would request the organizers to send maybe a YouTube link and all links to concerned
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Send
sir.
it to PMO, Niti Ayog, the Ministry of Family and Welfare.
You need to edit some parts.
And maybe you edit and all those
I think this is very important.
questions need to go, because this has been, as Dr. Gupta has properly said, one of the very rich brainstorming. And we had been thinking, I had been thinking for the last 7 days about each of the question. And believe me, I prepared so much. Give me every detail of whatever you want. I'll share my PowerPoint with you, because remaining questions also, they can put in additional information. So I think all this brainstorming, and it should not go waste, and go to the appropriate authorities.
Awesome.
Actually, I mean, just what Dr. Pandya said, at the MCI level also, we're thinking of foundation courses, we're thinking of teaching ethics in the medical school and teaching the...
So we are already teaching. Now the foundation course is already there.
Yeah. So this
This is
is
the second year of foundation course.
Yeah. So this is what is preparing the graduates and undergraduates for the test. This is what the society needs to understand, that medical doctors are being prepared in that way. And the same thing should also apply to the society. Young people, how to behave. I mean, in the management course, somewhere I read, you cannot prevent the incidents, but you can alter your behavior response to the incident.
Yes.
It is very important. They must groom how to respond to the incident and episodes.
Sure. Thank you so much, doctors. And Dr. Naithani sends her apologies because she couldn't continue the discussion because of some network issue. But on behalf of Docplexus, I would like to thank all our 4 panelists for such an insightful evening full of discussion around patient-centric services, structural planning, positive journalism, proper dispersion of information till the last person, healthcare preparedness, accountability, ethical responsibilities of doctors, very important observatory settings for system planning and reshaping the systems. We're very lucky to have experts like you. Also, for our great viewing doctors, we are blessed to have a loyal viewership for all our webinars, which encourage Docplexus to hold such interesting discussions as always. Thank you so much and have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.